Bienvenidos.
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 Welcome to the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast.
Here's your host,
Certified language coach,
Tamara Marie.
Hola, bienvenidos al episodio 243. Welcome to episode 243 of the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. I am your host, Tamara Marie, and today we will be talking all about something that is unavoidable right now. So in case you're not familiar, it is the time that comes around just once every 4 years, and it's a very big deal all throughout Latin America. So if you're listening to this in 2026 or maybe 4 years from now or 4 years from that, this will be very timely for you. And it will help you improve your conversations in Spanish, regardless of where you are in the Spanish-speaking world or even the world. And that is the 2026 FIFA World Cup. So it is finally here. And for the first time, it's being held in North America, meaning there will be games in the United States, in Mexico, and in Canada. So that means this summer, este verano, you're going to be hearing about Fútbol, which not American football or fútbol americano, but what we call here soccer. You will be hearing about everywhere you go, whether you're on social media, watching the news, going out dancing, going out to eat, going to a bar or a restaurant. Undoubtedly, you will be hearing people talking about the FIFA World Cup. So I thought it's a great opportunity to learn some Spanish because you'll really be able to connect with people from all over the Spanish-speaking world if you can talk about soccer. Now, I know that you might not be a soccer fan if you're listening to this. In fact, many people in the U.S. really don't watch soccer. And I think most of the people who do watch soccer here are actually not from the United States. So, but you'll still be able to find plenty of places where people are watching the game if you're engaged with the 2026 World Cup or, 4 years in the future. Like I said, if you're listening to this as a refresher, this will be relevant because soccer is something that is very much part of Latin American culture. Now, this year's World Cup is significant because it's starting, first of all, 11 de junio, so the 11th of June, all the way to el 19 de julio. So it's going all the way to July 19th. It's a little bit over a month. So you have plenty of opportunities to try to watch a game and maybe try to understand and have conversations with people about the World Cup. Now, this year might be the last time you get to see some legendary players like Lionel Messi from Argentina. And Argentina actually did win the last World Cup, which was a nail-biter, or Cristiano Ronaldo from Portugal. And then you have Neymar from Brazil. So there's some really legendary players. So if you even don't know anything about soccer, you want to watch out for those names because people will be talking about them as well as other players from all over the world, not just the Spanish-speaking world. So if you've never watched a full match in your life, I'm here to help you. Now, granted, right now, this is also the time where the NBA finals are going on, and I've been watching basketball for the first time in a while. So I get it if you're not a soccer fan, but I want to make sure that you're able to be conversant about the game and maybe even catch a few minutes of it and understand a little bit of what's going on. So in this episode, we're going to go through a little bit of the vocabulary related to the World Cup, as well as soccer in general. We'll talk about what some of the positions are. How do you even win the World Cup? Like, what is this even about if you don't know anything about soccer? And then just some of the things that you might hear when you're listening to a game or hearing people talk about the World Cup. All right? Entonces, vamos a empezar. As always, if you want to see the vocabulary that we're featuring on this episode, go to learnspanishconsalsa.com/243 for episode 243 of the podcast. And we'll also have a link to all of our World Cup episodes at learnspanishconsalsa.com/Copa Mundial. Okay, Copa Mundial. So let's talk about the World Cup. What even is it, right? Why are people talking about the FIFA World Cup in particular? So FIFA is just the name of the organization, just like you have the NBA finals, right? That's the name of the organization, National Basketball Association. So FIFA is an organization. I will not get into the controversy around that, but just know that FIFA is the organization that hosts or is responsible for hosting the World Cup and managing it. So, ¿qué es la Copa Mundial? So Copa Mundial is literally what it sounds like. It's a little translation. So Copa is cup and Mundial is world, like worldwide. So mundo is technically world, but Mundial, because it's an adjective referring to la Copa, we're saying it's la Copa Mundial. So the cup of the world, right? So mundo is world, mundial, because in this context, it's an adjective. So it's like the worldwide cup. And cup, you can use it to talk about copa, like a regular cup or a glass that you drink from. But in this case, it really does mean like a trophy. So you actually see like the cup itself. It's like a big trophy. So that is a literal meaning. So no issues there. Now, you will hear people just refer to the World Cup as El Mundial. Okay. So you might hear that El Mundial. And someone might ask, like, ¿Vas a ver el Mundial? ¿Vas a ver el Mundial? So, like, are you going to watch the World Cup? Right. So again, that's just for short because there are many, many different leagues in soccer. And I will say, I am not a huge soccer fan. I don't know too much about the game, but I will say the difference with the World Cup and the other leagues that exist, and there are many, many soccer leagues all over the world. It's important to know that first, the World Cup happens cada 4 años, so every 4 years. And it's a tournament where you have national teams that are playing. Okay, so normally, like I said, there's a lot of leagues that may be regional, maybe specific to a certain country. But in the World Cup, you have what are called selecciones nacionales. Selecciones nacionales. And those are the national teams. Okay, so and it's kind of a big deal because players do have to be selected for the team. So let's say there's a player who, for example, right now, Cristiano Ronaldo, who's from Portugal, he's playing in a league in Saudi Arabia. But when it comes time for the World Cup, he will be playing for the Portugal national team if he's selected for the team. Now, obviously, it's Cristiano Ronaldo, so he's going to be selected for the team. But for other players who may be playing, maybe they're from Brazil, but they're playing in London or France, they still have to be selected for their national team. So it's really a big deal, just that selection process of being chosen for the team. It's something similar. Maybe you want to think about the Olympics, since that's something that happens every 4 years and there's national teams. So it's something like that, but just for football or soccer. So you'll hear the national teams referred to as la selección. So, por ejemplo, la selección de México, that's the Mexican national team, or la selección de Colombia, that's the Colombia national team. Okay, so the point obviously is that every country wants to send its best players. And there are rules, to that as well. But the important thing is to understand that the national teams, regardless of what leagues they play in, is where they will be for the World Cup. So the other thing is the World Cup has a couple phases. So this year, and I think it does change every time depending upon the rules, but this year there are 48 equipos, 48. So that is 48 teams. That's a massive amount of teams. So in order to drill this all down within a month, they actually play in 2 different phases. So the first phase or stage is called la fase de grupos. La fase de grupos. And this is when all the players play in certain groups that they're assigned to, right? From there, they would advance to what's called the knockout tournament. And at that stage, if you lose, you're completely out, right? So we go from the groups, and it's a complex system. I won't even pretend to try to explain all of it. But the important thing is once you get to the knockout phase of the tournament, if you lose, se acabó. It is over for you. And the last team standing wins la copa, or the cup. Easy enough, right? So let's talk a little bit about how the game is played, right? Because again, I don't know a whole lot about soccer, so we're just going to give you the basics of this, right? Just so you'll have an idea of what's going on. The first thing is a game in soccer, or a match as it's called, right? In football, is called un partido. Un partido. Okay, so if I wanted to say like, oh, there's a match today, which you'll probably be saying every day between now and July 19th, I would say, hoy hay partido. Hoy hay partido. So there's a match today, right? So you will hear that literally todos los días. And the teams are called equipos. Okay, so there's dos equipos in un partido. And a partido has different parts. So we have el primer tiempo, which is the first half, el segundo tiempo, which is the second half, and then halftime, which is el medio tiempo. Simple, right? So primer tiempo, first half, segundo tiempo, second half, medio tiempo, that's halftime. So similar to a lot of other sports, there's a halftime. And some other things that are important to know, just vocabulary. You have el balón, which is the ball. The goal is called la portería. And the point of this entire thing, right, is to get the ball into the net or the goal, right? So, and this is the noun, right? La portería. So this is interesting too. So on the team, you have 11 jugadores. So there's 11 players on each team. And the match is supposed to last 90 minutos. However, there is something interesting about the way the game is played that's maybe different from other sports you're used to. So, for example, in football and basketball, so American football, if there's an issue where they need to call like let's say a penalty or on a player or a foul happens, or the coach wants to interrupt the game, right? They will stop the clock on the game and wait till that's resolved, and then they will restart the clock. For whatever reason, in football or soccer, that does not happen. The game clock just keeps on going. So what does end up happening is what they'll do instead of stopping the clock is they will add extra time. All right. So you will hear that, extra time is being added to the clock so that they play the full 90 minutes. Now, there also can be a tie, right? So I'm sure you've seen, if you're not familiar, you have to score a goal, so un goal, and that's the act of actually scoring to get points. But there are some soccer games where it's maybe 0 or 1 point, and there's not that many puntos on the board. And in that case, there could be un empate. So that's a tie. So again, these are things that you just might hear. Extra time is also called la prórroga. And if we get to a point, and again, this depends on where you are in the tournament, but you might see this, so I just wanted to let you know, if it goes to the end and it's still tied, and I think this only happens in the knockout tournament when you get to the end, there could be what is called una tanda de penales. Una tanda de penales. And that is a penalty shootout. So that happens like at the end of the game. And this is actually how Argentina won the last World Cup. And I'll include a clip in the show notes, learnspanishconsalsa.com/243, so you can see it, because it was the most intense part of even if you know nothing about soccer, you could feel the intensity of these penalty kicks that happen at the end of the game. So that's what can happen at the end, right? So those are some things just to know about how you win the game. Obviously, if you have the most goals, you win, but then these penalty kicks become important if it gets to that point, which again, doesn't happen all the time. So when it does happen, especially when the whole World Cup is on the line, it can be kind of exciting to watch. Now, I want to introduce something that you will probably hear people argue about. This is something I've heard frequently, and I still don't know what it means, but I will tell you what it says it means. You will hear people screaming about being fuera de lugar. Fuera de lugar. So fuera de lugar, it basically means there's a player who receives a pass, but they are behind the last defender on the field. So if that happens, the play gets called back, and you'll hear the commentator say, if you're watching on Univision or Telemundo, I think the game is on Telemundo this time, you might hear fuera de lugar. And then everyone's like, oh, because everyone argues about this. In English, it means offsides, right? And every sport, I think, well, not every sport, but there are many team sports that have their own version of what it means to be offsides. You're not where you're supposed to be on the court or the field in relationship to the defender. So I never really get when people are arguing about it. I'm just like, I don't know who we're talking about, where they are on the field, but you will hear people argue about being offside. But in Spanish, it's fuera de lugar. And, the person that determines all of this, who people also yell at, is called el árbitro. El árbitro. And that is the referee, right? So the ref is the one, the official that is responsible for enforcing the rules of the game. And one thing you probably definitely have heard, even if you know nothing else about football or soccer, is the penalty that someone gets is represented by una tarjeta amarilla. Una tarjeta amarilla. And that's the yellow card, right? So you've probably seen the yellow card. That is their warning. So if you get a yellow card, you know that you are on thin ice. If you get 2 yellow cards, technically, you're supposed to then get una tarjeta roja. Una tarjeta roja. And that's that red card. So if you see that, you're out. You are out of the game. You don't get to come back. That is it. So you get expulsado. Expulsado. And that is to be ejected from the game, right? So that is it in a nutshell as far as, how everything is set up, how you win the game, and how you get to the next round of the tournament. Okay. So now that we got that down, we're going to go into some of the positions on the field. So when you hear people talking about them, you'll kind of have an idea of what these positions are. And in the next episode, I'm going to go into some more detail about how the game is played, some of the things that you'll hear people say, and of course, because this is Spanish con Salsa, some of la música, because every time there's a World Cup, there's new music that comes out for each country, for the World Cup in general. So we'll talk more about the musical side of it. But let's figure out who's on the field, right? So we want to know, who are these jugadores or players? So there are several posiciones in un equipo. And first, everyone is called a jugador. So we have los jugadores, those are the players. But each player does have a special position. So we'll start with el portero, which again, one you're probably familiar with, even if you don't know too much about soccer. It's the goalkeeper. So el portero, and you can remember the goal, right, is la portería. So he's protecting, el portero is protecting the goal. So he is the one player in football, even though it's called football, it's funny because in English, football sounds like foot, but in Spanish, foot is pie, right? So maybe it should be pie ball. Anyway, but the goalkeeper or el portero is the only one that can use las manos. So the goalkeeper is the only player that can use his hands and not his feet to touch the ball. All right. So you might hear, announcer saying, el portero hizo una gran atajada. Una gran atajada. So that's like he made a great save, like he stopped the ball. He was able to keep the ball from going into the net. So again, a lot of people know about the goalkeeper. Sometimes they wear a different jersey and they have on gloves. But anyway, now let's talk about another position you probably have no idea what it is. And honestly, you probably won't recognize it when you see it. But when you hear people talk about it, you'll know what they're talking about. It's el defensa. El defensa. And this is the defender. Now, their job is also to protect the goal, but they're not the goalkeeper. So again, they're in that sort of zone before, as you're getting close to the goal, their job is to protect the goal so that the other team can't score. Okay. So what you might see sometime, you might hear someone say, los defensas están formando una línea. Los defensas están formando una línea. So the defenders are forming a line. So again, they're trying to protect the goal. And again, you might not know what's going on when you see this, but if you see a goal get stopped before it gets to the goalkeeper, then you might hear someone say that it was el defensa. This is also important too. Some of these you'll notice, like we have el defensa, and then the next one that we'll go over in a minute, el mediocampista. Even though these words end with the letter A, they are still masculine. Generally because we're talking about men's soccer here. So all the players are men on the field. So it's el defensa, the defender. Okay, so don't get confused by that. And don't say el defenso. All right. So the next one that we have is el mediocampista. El mediocampista. And that is midfielder. which, as it sounds like, they're in the middle of the field. Now, there are many different types of midfielders. It is not as simple as that. I am not going to pretend to know, be able to tell you all the different types of mediocampistas, but it really doesn't matter. It's the guys in the middle of the field. This is most of the team, I believe. So they're really the ones who are doing the most running in the middle of the field. They're getting the ball back and forth. They're the ones who are really good at passing and dribbling the ball. They do a lot in a soccer game. Okay, so you might hear el mediocampista controló el balón. El mediocampista controló el balón. So the midfielder controlled the ball. So again, think about it. Someone's trying to take the ball from you. If you're a midfielder, you need to be good at handling the ball and making sure the other team doesn't take it from you. Because the whole point of the midfielder is to get the ball to, or el balón, to el delantero. El delantero. And el delantero, this is the one who, this is the position that gets most of the glory. So if you've heard of a soccer player and you know them by name, most likely they are un delantero, or a striker, right? Or it's also called the forward. And this is the person who's known for scoring the most goals. So this is someone like Pele from Brazil back in the day, who all these trick shots they would do, all this, footwork and things like that. And their whole purpose is to meter un gol. Meter un gol. So meter literally means to put in, right? So you can put something in a drawer, for example. But in this case, we are talking about putting the ball or el balón in el gol. So you might hear someone say, el delantero metió el gol. El delantero metió el gol. So it means that he scored, basically, right? He put the ball in the goal. He scored. All right. And then the last person that you will see on the field, but probably it will also be vocal depending on the team, is el director técnico, or el DT. And this is the coach, right? So this is the coach of the team. You might not see them on the field, but they will be on the sidelines saying very spirited things to their team. And you might hear someone say, el DT hizo un cambio. El DT hizo un cambio. In this case, cambio means a substitution. So he's changing out the players in the team. All right. So that is what we have, and again, I know this is a lot. Next time, we're going to start talking about what you're going to hear when you're watching a match, some things you might hear depending on the country. We'll really get into some more detail. But for now, as a review, we covered a lot, right? We talked about la Copa Mundial, which is the World Cup, literally a cup of the world. Or it's sometimes just called El Mundial. There's phases or fases where you have 48 national teams competing in a group stage, una fase grupal, followed by a knockout phase. And the winner at the end of all that wins la Copa. Un partido de fútbol dura 90 minutos más o menos, so about 90 minutes for a football game. You have el primer tiempo, el segundo tiempo for first and second half, and el medio tiempo. That's the midpoint of the game. There might be time added, extra time at the end. And the 5 key positions are el portero, the goalkeeper, el defensa, the defender, el mediocampista, the midfielder, el delantero, the striker or the forward, and el DT, the coach. All right. So I hope that you have found this helpful. Again, go to our website, learnspanishconsalsa.com/243 for episode 243 of the podcast. And you'll be able to see the vocabulary that we talked about in this episode, as well as on our show notes page. We will include all of this, and I will put that video clip in of the last World Cup where it was won with penalty kicks. Okay, so you'll be able to see some of this in action. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, learnspanishconsalsa.com, so you never miss an episode. We will be talking more about the World Cup, but we will be talking about music as well. So keep listening throughout this whole period where we are going to be in La Copa Mundial mode, but we will be bringing back some more music in the coming weeks as well. As always, I hope something that you heard in this episode will help you go one step closer from Spanish beginner to bilingual. Hasta la próxima.